Thank you for joining us. My name is Liz Moody. I'm the Director of Marketing at Canon, a multidisciplinary consulting firm based in California. With me is Stephanie Hunting, Senior Marketing Associate, also with Canon. Our topic today, Solutions for Acceptance, using education to reduce the Ick-Factor and increase understanding. The Ick-Factor. It's a pretty interesting topic that has caught a lot of attention over the years and has become of even greater interest lately. Within the water industry, reference to the Ick-Factor or Yuck factor is something that most of us try to stay away from. Why bring it up or reference it, we think? Isn't that just bringing up something negative? This train of thought is exactly what led us to conducting research and beginning our study originally. Having worked in the water industry as part of Canon for over 18 years, I've become very comfortable with industry terminology. As marketing director, it is my job to stay in tune with what is going on in the market. Neither Stephanie nor I are engineers, we're in marketing, which at times, lots of times, means that we might see the world through a slightly different lens. In addition, we are both parents and in tune with what's going on with school-age kids, which adds yet another perspective. It was about 2 years ago, and a group of us at work were talking about water, recycling water, and the potential of IPR and DPR projects. What was fascinating was that within the group of technically educated professionals, quite a few were absolutely not interested in the idea of closing the loop or recycling water for potable purposes. Many of them were very much ick when we discussed it. And the more we talked, the more we began to think, why? What is it that makes some so turned off by the concept of possibly consuming recycled water? We've all heard it before in reference to the idea of drinking recycled water. Ick, that's disgusting. I'd never in a million years drink that. Needless to say, we were intrigued by this reaction and we decided to delve into the topic a little deeper. We began to research. We read many pieces online from within the water industry, several articles from the Water Reuse Foundation, and some from outside the industry. We found that while studies have been conducted to test the perception of recycled water on adults, we couldn't find any research in relation to recycled water in kids. And this led us to do our study. So to begin, we identified some study goals as follows. Do school-age children have an understanding of the urban water cycle? Does education affect acceptance levels for using recycled water in school-age children? And does age play a role in the Ick-Factor? So today, we're going to give you a quick look into what happened next. How we did it, what we did, what we learned, why this information matters, and what's next.
All right, thank you, Liz. So today I'm going to talk to you about the overall process that we went through to conduct our study. So after we determined our study goals, we weren't quite sure about the next step in conducting our study. So we reached out to local teachers to see if they would be interested in participating. The teachers that we reached out to were excited to open up their classrooms and have us speak with their students about recycled water. We found this response highly encouraging as it reinforced our passion and kept us moving from one step to the next. In total, we received interest from schools within 3 different communities along the central coast of California. Our first community is Santa Maria, which is located within the Santa Barbara County limits. Santa Maria is best known for agriculture, oil production, and Santa Maria-style barbecue. The city population of more than 100,000 residents, it's the largest city within the county. San Luis Obispo is just north of Santa Maria with a population of 48,000 residents. San Luis Obispo is a university town and is home to Cal Poly SLO, which significantly impacts the average education level of the town in a positive way. Further, the city has a water recycling facility, so purple pipe and signs about purple pipe are a common feature. Paso Robles is just north of San Luis Obispo and has gained notoriety as of late for its growing wine industry, boasting more than 200 wineries with a population of 25,000. So after the positive community response, we designed a survey to measure students' understanding of the urban water cycle, their acceptance levels associated with different types of uses of recycled water, and their comfort levels associated with increasing degrees of personal contact with recycled water. We broke the survey into two parts, the first being fact-based survey questions that ask students true or false questions about water science, such as true or false, the water molecule can be polluted, or all water is recycled water. Our acceptance level questions were a measurement for students' comfort levels with recycled water usage and ranged from low degrees of contact, such as watering lawns or flushing toilets, to bathing or brushing one's teeth. The final question in the survey asks students to respond with a sentence or a drawing that represents what they picture when hearing the term recycled water. This allowed for a more personalized response. Later in the follow-up survey, we slightly modified this last question to ask students how their thoughts about recycled water changed after the educational presentation. So after teachers administered the survey within their classroom, we did our educational outreach program, which took about 30 minutes. The first part of our presentation included a PowerPoint presentation created by the Water Reuse Foundation called Downstream. Water Reuse Foundation has done a lot to develop resources to educate the public regarding perceptions of recycled water. The presentation Downstream provides an overview of the need for water reuse technology as a means for a sustainable future. We presented a slideshow to students. We talked through the slides. Students were intrigued by many aspects of the presentation, but were especially surprised when they learned that the amount of water on Earth doesn't change. Next, we watched a 3-minute video called The Ways of Water. The Ways of Water presents an overview of the many human interventions in the water cycle and looks at the benefits of water provision options, including direct potable reuse. The animation is an easy-to-understand presentation of the urban water cycle and water purification. Next, we showed students an urban water cycle poster. This provided students with an illustration and an interactive and accessible approach to the fact that all water is recycled water. Students were able to see where they stood in relation to the overall water cycle and how the process of water use and reuse is ongoing. Finally, we concluded our presentation with a water demonstration, where we asked students to get up out of their seats and make observations about 3 mason jars that were filled with either tap, bottled, or recycled water taken from the wastewater treatment facility in San Luis Obispo. Students had fun guessing which jar was filled with what kind of water and held very strong opinions based on their observations. Our study totals came to 433 students within the 3 communities that we reached out to. After our educational outreach program, we gave students a follow-up survey to see how their acceptance level and their understanding changed. For our final question, we were interested to see how the students responded to their open-ended question. Our before responses ranged from students not really having a clear understanding of what recycled water means to having a more dynamic, in-depth understanding. The student draws a picture of water flowing over little mountains and then going to a recycling facility, but then they write, "I don't know what this is, I'm guessing right now." Our next student's example shows how the recycling campaign has really been successful and has resonated with how students have resonated with messaging. Here we see a student putting dirty water into a recycling can and good water coming out. Finally, we see this student has had some sort of interaction with recycled water and has an understanding of what recycled water means. They draw a very in-depth picture of water moving downstream, being cleaned, and then used in a downstream community. Our after responses are very encouraging as we see that the message that we gave students really connected to their understanding. This student in particular liked the idea that the water that they drink today might have once been drunk by builders of the pyramids. This student shows their change in perception and acceptance. They say, the first time I took the survey, ew. The second time, it's not that bad. Finally, we see that this student really appreciated the outreach program as a whole. They wrote, I like the idea of our water having history. I'm glad I learned about the subject. So let's talk a little bit about our results. First, let's review our fact-based questions. So these are all true, false, either correct or incorrect based on their responses. Our fact-based questions overall, our before responses come in at 44 and 53%. Now that's close enough within the margin of error to show that students, for the most part, were guessing, that they didn't really have a clear understanding of water science, and it was only after we came into the classroom and did our short 30-minute presentation that they were able to get 80% of the questions correct. Our before results, broken down by age group, show that students in elementary had a slightly higher understanding of water science as a whole than middle school or high school students. We attribute this higher level of correct answers to the fact that most students within the elementary age, that's about the time when they receive water science education. Our after responses, once again, are really encouraging across the board. We see the biggest change with elementary students, where they were able to get 86% of the questions correct, whereas middle school and high school students still had a positive increase in their understanding. Our acceptance levels measured students' comfort from either never using recycled water to it being always a good option. Our acceptance levels show that students, before we entered into the classroom, had a low level of acceptance for use of recycled water, especially as the degree of contact increased. We were really encouraged to see that after a short 30-minute in-class presentation, students' acceptance levels rose across the board. So within the survey, we had an option where students could say that no contact was ever appropriate for recycled water. What we were interested to see is that even after our educational outreach, for the most part, 10% of our group said that no contact was ever appropriate for recycled water. Now, we attribute this either to the fact that a 30-minute in-class presentation isn't long enough to change these perceptions, or that within any situation that you're always going to have about 10% resistant to new technologies or changes. Looking at our before levels broken down by age groups, we see that high schoolers, the pink line, have a more varied and distinct opinion of how recycled water should be used. They have higher levels of acceptance for low degrees of contact, such as food crops and toilets, whereas laundry, bathing, and everything else, acceptance levels just decrease dramatically. Middle school and elementary students have a more similar trend where they have a higher degree of acceptance for lawns, food crops, and toilets, then it decreases as it gets closer to the degree of personal contact. Our after levels, once again, are highly encouraging as we see that across the board, all age groups see an increase in acceptance levels, especially high school students, where we see that their acceptance levels as a whole increase dramatically. Middle school and elementary students have higher acceptance levels as well, but we were perplexed to see that for some reason they are resistant to recycled water use in toilets. And we aren't quite sure what that reason is.
So let's take a look at our study goals and see what we've learned. Our first question was, do school-age children have an understanding of the urban water cycle? Well, from our study, we would say not generally. While there are communities with educational programs and resources available, it appeared that most of the kids within our study group either had little recall of the information learned or had not received the education prior to us entering the classroom. Second question, does education affect acceptance levels for using recycled water in school-age children? Yes, absolutely. While our program was only 30 minutes, our survey results showed that the kids had a change in perception and understanding. We believe if this program was extended and/or was applied consistently, the results would improve even more. And our third question, does age play a role in the Ick-Factor? Our answer, yes, definitely. From our study, the results would show that the younger kids were more responsive to the education. So what does it all mean? Escalating pressure from increased population and an ever-growing uncertainty of water supply conditions, especially as a result of our most current drought conditions, are heightening our awareness of the shortage of drinkable water. And it's not a concern that will go away anytime soon or for long. Our water supply has a level of uncertainty. While the science and technology is becoming more available to build the infrastructure to help alleviate this water shortage, many municipalities have found that public resistance is one of the main obstacles to the adoption of much-needed water augmentation projects. Since the 1970s, a significant body of knowledge has developed around the topic of public acceptance of recycled water. Most studies investigating public acceptance come to the same conclusion. People are very open to using recycled water for uses with low personal contact, such as watering trees and shrubs in their garden. But they're reluctant to adopt recycled water for uses with high personal contact, such as drinking or bathing one's baby. Psychologist Carol Numeroff has conducted research studies to learn more about why the ick. Numeroff believes the challenge is more in moving people beyond the image they have of toilet to tap. The problem is what's been termed the magical law of contagion, which essentially says once something has come in contact with something disgusting, it's always in contact in people's minds. So in this case, something that may have once been in or near the toilet is still in or near the toilet. The trick isn't removing the actual contaminants in the water, because we can do that through technology. The real trick is to remove the connection in people's minds from that of something that has been in the toilet to drinkable water. So how do we do that? Well, remember, it is all one water, right? We've been using recycled water for all of history. So again, the question, why the ick? Where did it come from, and how do we get rid of it? As consumers, each of us has a vast number of attitudes towards products, services, or groups. Attitudes are socially constructed. They are the result of experience. We are not born with positive or negative attitudes towards certain objects or groups. Therefore, the Ick-Factor is learned. We are not born with this belief. And if it is learned, then there's a good chance we can do something to change the way the general public feels and thinks about recycled water. To successfully implement a recycled water program will require a multi-level approach. Marketing can help, but advertising must be a part of the program. Public acceptance levels and attitudes have been changed before. If we look for other instances where attitudes and behaviors that have been changed, we find two widely recognized topics: anti-tobacco and recycling. In each instance, there was a prevalent socially constructed attitude that was the focus of intense advertising and educational campaigns. In each instance, the ads and education was cast over a vast population and used everything from print media, school campaigns, and popular celebrities to get the message across. So why not water? The conversation is already happening, but it is critical that we in the water industry be a part of that conversation. Get in front of it and make sure that the message that is out there is the message that we want out there. To create and implement a successful recycled water program, it is essential to have a multi-level approach. The approach has to include advertising, social media, and PR events. However, this approach must include education at the forefront, especially educating our young. When acceptance can be fostered in children, it can have a twofold benefit. First, those children serve as advocates among their families and peer groups, increasing acceptance levels in the near term as they share their knowledge. And second, fostering acceptance of recycled water in younger generations leads to lifelong acceptance, lasting change, and potentially a paradigm shift in attitudes toward recycled water. So what's next? While we are looking to expand our educational outreach and study to include more regions and potentially other parts of the country, we are currently conducting a survey to find out more about educational programs that are already in place. The survey asks questions to determine how many agencies already have an educational component as part of their water program, what it includes, how often it is given, etc. And we'd like your help. As part of this presentation, we're asking you to also take part in our survey. You can find the link on our website. Once we've received a good response on the survey, we will summarize the data and then provide the information back to those that took the survey originally. In addition, our contact information is here. If you have any questions or comments, please send us an email. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. We hope you found it informative as well as thought-provoking. Have a great day.